I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. Marriage is the best. Last week we skipped it. We just went on our merry way. This last couple of months have been pretty intense with taking care of the newest baby, trying to get Bex the maximum amount of rest that we possibly can day to day, and just basically failing at that because there is no amount of rest that she can get that is available to us day to day. So it's like this constant fight to get a rest, and then everything seems to be undermining that for us. So it's been an interesting couple of months. Difficult and stressful, also good. Difficult managing the reality of how much is on all our plates at the moment, with the reality of the limitations that we're finding. And whenever I talk to new parents or parents generally speaking, I think that we find that they are also attempting to manage their plate size, all that they have going on, with the reality of their limitations. And so I think we're in a good spot with good company. And if that's what your experience of this last week has been, then you're in good company as well. This content doesn't really make our lives any easier. It's interesting because there's such doing the podcast and all the other things that we have going on is kind of makes life harder. And that makes sense to me that it would make it harder, that the grind of adding something onto the plate when it's already so full would not necessarily make things lighter, simple addition there. But it just, in the last year and a half, it's been difficult to balance all of the things that need to be balanced. And Bex and I are, recently having conversations about those balances, and both of us feeling as though we're at the end of ourselves with so much left to do. So there was no episode last week, and I tried to give myself permission not to do one because there were some other things that really desperately needed to be done. There were some connecting things that needed to be done, dating and connecting and conversing. And ultimately, I think that I genuinely needed to spend some time with Becca instead. And that is a sacrifice that I feel like I need to be willing to make every time that it's necessary. And like tonight, where she goes to bed super early and I have a little bit of extra time to do this, then I can break it out and we can talk. And we can talk about marriage, and we can talk about the future, and we can talk about all those things. It's been interesting to watch the numbers as they've kind of flowed in the last couple of weeks of people listening. And the number one episode that is doing well right now is the future of marriage. And that's actually where a lot of my mind has been over the course of the last couple of weeks. And it's a difficult problem to think through. It's a difficult problem to solve. And I think that it would take a lot of energy and backing and finances and thinking through what might be effective for setting up the next generation for success in their relationships. And as I've thought about it, one of the thoughts that I've had most recently are, I really like this next generation. I have so many clients that exist in this Gen Z stage of life. And I have to tell you, like, I really like them. Therapeutically speaking, liking a client is a good thing. Because counseling is kind of a microcosm or like a small example for what life really looks like out in the real world, right? So you come to counseling and you're able to practice things that you then need to bring into the real world, like relationships and skills and capacities and thinking and processing through things. And so when you like a client, when they are likable, when they are engaging in you on that relational level, and you're kind of feeling that way about a client, it's therapeutically relevant. As well as if you're meeting with a client and you don't really feel like you like them all that much, that is also very therapeutically relevant because there's something there. And your experience of the person, if you're going to be a good mirror, a good counselor, you're going to reflect them back to them. And if in that reflecting process, there's something off or wrong or disconnected, that is something to investigate. And so I was thinking about how much I like my Gen Z clients. They're fun, they're interesting, they're creative. Some of them are really driven. Some of them are, like all of them are figuring themselves out, despite the technology that they have access to. That's kind of new and scary for us, old millennial people, despite the fact that there's chaos going on in the world. And on top of the chaos that is going on in the world, we're also constantly kind of fed or around that chaos. Despite all of these circumstances, they are kind of resiliently figuring themselves out, figuring out how to exist with all this technology around all the time, figuring out how to relate to others, what they can know about themselves. And, honestly, I think I'm just finding that they're not that much more different than we were, even though we played with sticks in the mud and trampolines and trees. Like these kids that are coming up, especially ones that have loving, connected parents, are just normal kids figuring out normal life and doing so in a context that is, radically changing because of the speed of technology. But I don't know. I really like them. I think that they're really cool, and I'm excited for them. I'm excited for their futures because there's going to be challenges for this next generation in the areas of relationship, especially we talked about last time, the video that was put out about how the values structure is changing and shifting. And basically the video is talking about how Gen Z men are like moving in a different direction than Gen Z women. Gen Z men, let's see, let me actually just kind of reference this video so that you can go find it. I think I posted it on the show notes, but it's called The Gen Z Gender War, and it's on the YouTube channel front page. If I hadn't talked about this before, this is the video that I'm talking about. Caleb Hammer, who runs the front page on YouTube, also runs a page called Financial Audit, in which he yells at people for being dumb in their finances and kind of teaches and trains them. And it's very entertaining and kind of Jerry Springer-esque. And it's almost like if I were to like compare or like smoosh two shows together, it'd almost be like Dave Ramsey meets Kill Tony. If you know anything about Kill Tony or Dave Ramsey, you will understand what that means. And if you don't, that's okay. You don't really have to know either of those things. But in this video, the Gen Z Gender War, they talk about how Gen Z men are having a vastly different experience in life than Gen Z women. Gen Z men are becoming more religious, or at least reporting more religion. They're becoming more conservative along the political spectrum, just by population, and not by severity, but by population. And then they're also becoming increasingly disconnected from higher education. And then Gen Z women are becoming decreasingly religious, decreasingly conservative, and have very high numbers in higher education. Higher probably in quotations at this point because of the lack of highness in the educational realm at a lot of places out there. But anyway, they are experiencing such drastically different things that creating dialogue between Gen Z men and Gen Z women is a particularly kind of difficult challenge. And it's a particularly necessary challenge as we look into the future of marriage. And I've been thinking a lot about like, how do we inspire these people to come together? How do we inspire them to dialogue? One of the observations that I've had is that I think that they really want to be able to develop strong relationships. They've seen their parents do things right and do things wrong, and they're not quite sure, like they're still figuring themselves out in the areas of like what decisions they want to be making for their relationships. Some of them are very online, and I think being super online is obviously going to have a detrimental effect on their ability to engage in a healthy marital relationship. However, I think that I put it in the same kind of category as, previous generations' struggles with alcoholism. If you think about like the degree that alcoholism played a role in relationships over the course of many decades, it is probably, in my mind, probably one of the most destructive forces in relationships of the last maybe 50 years or something like that, maybe more. Now, you're not going to find that in many of the studies, but I think from personal experience, from the experience of practice, and from the historical data of like who is drinking and who has been drinking, I think it has touched more marriages than we could ever measure. And Gen Z is kind of stepping away from alcoholism. I don't know if you're aware, but like they actually have really low numbers because I think that they are moving away from alcoholism. They're moving toward other things, right? Like they're moving toward more marijuana. I think they're probably moving toward nicotine. I think they're moving toward screens and screen addiction. And so they're going to have their own challenges, but it's not like these previous generations haven't also had really difficult challenges and had to overcome addictions and changes and some of these other things. Ultimately, the Gen Z people who want to live healthy, balanced lives and not be stuck online are going to do that. And they're going to do it. I think that they're going to do it really, really well, because Gen Z, not only do they have access to all of these screens and video games and movies and TV shows and, ticky-tacks and YouTube stuff and the whole issue with spending time to like an excessive amount of time on screens being kind of the form of addiction that they might be most prone to. On top of that, you also, like, if you take into consideration their personal responsibility and agency in how they're going to create a relationship with these things, the technology stuff, then you can, not only can that be used in a destructive way, but it also can be used in a really healthy way. Like you can look up the Gottman stuff, their material, and you can have funny, engaging people talk to you about like the principles that make marriage work. You can go on Audible and you can listen to a book about basically anything under the sun. You can do YouTube searches on, I'm fighting or there's conflict in my relationship. What do I do? There's lots and lots and lots of opportunities to learn about the things that are important to you. And so just because they've got this, in my mind, in my millennial mind, I want to say that like the screens and the internet and the access and all of that stuff are going to be destructive forces in their relationships. As much as it has destructive power, I also think that we need to kind of branch out in our understanding of the balance between how destructive these things can be for them, but also how they equip them, if responsible, how they can equip them to be really successful and successful in areas and in ways that we weren't able to be successful because we didn't have access to the kinds of information and the kinds of technology that they're going to have access to. So I guess I'm trying to kind of be a little bit more measured in my thoughts and responses to technology and how I think that technology is going to impact marriage in the future. There are lots of things within the technologies that could be used very destructively, mainly pornography, other sexual promiscuity, or behaviors that lead to disconnect in their relationships. There's lots of different, there's going to always be like lots of different sites and things that young people can go to find destruction. And the access to those things, to the people who want to find those things, is going to be there. And so as we're trying to balance out the destructive nature of the access that they have as they grow, and that the next generation will also have, I'm also considering the benefits that can come from those things as well. If we could define for Gen Z the responsibilities that need to be taken in order to be successful in finances and relationships and then life, and to build meaning and value into their lives, then the people in this generation who want those things and are really motivated and are going to work really hard at it are going to get somewhere, just like in every generation. And the people who don't, are unmotivated or unwilling or want to, become victims, they are obviously going to find that path. It's quite easy to find it. And it's difficult to be responsible and accountable to yourself and to what you want and to a future spouse and all of those things. I think that educating this next generation about the risks of the choices that are ahead of them is going to be one way that we can help coach young people toward the right things. Like we mentioned financial audit, they are in that show is kind of coaching people toward responsibility and accepting responsibility for their financial decision making. Sometimes I get to have financial conversations in session, and it's always fun for me because I really am into finances and I really like talking about those things. And it can be very helpful to have a shame-free, understanding, non-judgmental environment. At least that's my goal, is to try and create those three things. To talk through about their questions about things. And sometimes I'll be in session and a younger person will be kind of surprised that I'm willing to engage them in financial conversations. I had somebody tell me that they didn't think that I was ever going to, talk to them about, just be so open and honest with it. And I think it's helpful for them, because if we're not honest with them about the reality of taxes and what they are, or the reality of insurance, or the reality of Roth IRAs or 401ks or whatever they really want to know about, then, we do them a disservice by not kind of giving them that information. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for them to seek out financially healthy information. But I also think that we need to go after them to like give them this kind of information. So on one level, I think I'm talking like from the educational standpoint of like, how do we educate young people in their late teens, early 20s, who have the capacity to absorb some levels of information that can equip them to make better, healthier friendship and relationship decisions, right? So how do we do that? How do we engage those people? Well, so many of them are online, right? So I think what we need compelling, helpful online coursework materials, thoughts, feelings, examples of healthy relationships, and a place for them to honestly ask questions. Dave Ramsey has been having, hundreds of conversations with people every year, breaking down how to move through their financial decision-making. And he's created a structure for financial decision-making, basically like a decision tree that you can run every decision through and know exactly what the answer based on this system that they created would be. It's a beautiful tool because it's so simple and anybody can use it. And I think we need something like that for relationships, to warn people about the dangers of the decisions that they're going to have to make about themselves, their responsibilities, their media diets, their intake of, all of the things. Kind of similar almost to the drug. There was this huge drug push when I was in school where DARE would come in and talk to us about drugs and alcohol. And if that had an impact on young people, and if that might be driving young people away from alcohol, on top of their own personal experiences, on top of everything else, that educational program maybe made an impact. And so if there are financial classes that can be taken through high school to equip people to know and understand some things about their finances, I think that we need relational classes to help to equip people who are needing to learn about how to structure and how to know clearly decision-making tree. What does a healthy relationship look like? What does a healthy relationship not look like? What are the things that I'm looking for in order to find a healthy relationship? What are the things that should like cause true red flags in my, dating life? And how do I make decisions based on those things? Because shooting out into the dark, without information, without good data, without being educated on some of these things, I just think is dangerous and unnecessary, because the information is out there. How we organize it and how we get it to them and how we make it compelling, like financial audit, is a huge question. And I think they're desperate for it, but they're also a challenging audience to reach, because everything is vying for their attention. Everything wants to grab their attention, pull it a certain way. And so the information would have to be so compelling, or they would have to want it so bad, and they would want the responsibility that would come along with the information in order to actually make the change. So it could be online, right? Like there could be this like online resource, online coursework, online compelling content, hopefully almost like a financial audit, where it occurs every week for 3 weeks, or every week, like 3 times a week, where these conversations are being had and people are like working through those things live, and they can kind of get lots of reps done just by listening and watching other people do the reps. So that would be really cool. It would be really cool. I think it would be compelling. I think it would help set them up for success if they could learn those things live and watch other people learn it, and for it to be relevant and capturing to them so that they could, engage it in a healthy way. So if you have any thoughts or feelings about that, feel free to email us at marriageisthebest@yahoo.com. If you like our content, you should leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and you should write it out. You should like write out the things that you're enjoying about it, and just shout us out so that we can reach more people and for the future of marriage. If you wouldn't mind engaging with the content a little bit, right? Like even just like hitting the 5 stars on Spotify, or going on YouTube and subscribing to the channel, or any of those things, right? If you're just willing to do that small little part, I think that more and more and more people are going to find these kinds of conversations and, well, monologue. This is not a conversation. This is a monologue. But it's a conversation between you and me, right? Like we are having, that's one of the things I love so much about podcasts, is that like I can have a conversation with Joe Rogan and Caleb Hammer and just like sit and then be a fly on the wall and think about what they're saying and think through the questions that they're asking or not asking, or respond in my own head as a delusional human being with like how I might respond to or engage with this kind of conversation or that kind of conversation. And I think that, you know, it could make us better conversationalists by like hearing those things and being exposed to these ideas and engaging in that way. So the online stuff they need, I think they also need physical space to like be connected, and the online would be like reach them where they're at. And then the physical space, I think, is a need that goes beyond what is like currently accessible. And basically all I'm saying is like, I think that Gen Z needs a place. Like we had like coffee shops, I think was a place that people would go. Bars were a place that people would go. Church groups were a place that people would go. But ultimately, I think that a lot of people are like moving away from a lot of those physical spaces. And I think that they need a new kind of physical space to go and practice conversations, connections, engagement, enjoyment, learn something, and that there would be that there would be a safe place for them to go to do those things and to have those conversations and to connect with each other, that also would facilitate friendship, because friendship is the backbone of the foundation of, you know, the relationship. Marriage is the best. It's so hard, but it really is the best. And so I want to give this next generation an opportunity to like develop into the best marriage generation that there ever was. And I really do think that they could do it. I think that they could take the ball and move it forward and crush it. And I'm actually seeing it with some of my older clients, talking with them about their kids and how they're taking responsibility and doing these like really wonderful things and making their own families, and how powerful it would be to then equip them and the next generation to do this marriage thing well, even though, despite how difficult it is, and despite the necessary sacrifices that have to be made, and despite, you know, what culture wants to tell them about marriage. And I think this is the end.